Hello everyone and welcome to Smarter Video Creation from your smartphone. In this webinar tonight, I'm going to be taking you through all the ins and outs of filming on your mobile device. There we go, got it out in front of me. All about filming on your mobile device. So in this webinar, if you have a question at any point in time, at the bottom of your Zoom controls, you'll find the options to use the chat function and the question and answer. If you have a question, jump in there, put your question in there, and I'll do my best to answer it. I'll be coming back to it regularly to check to see if anyone has any questions. Now, this webinar is brought to you by the Digital Solutions Program, which is an Australian government initiative, and Business Station, who are the not-for-profit that operate the Digital Solutions Program. I'm one of the full-time advisors based in the regional city of Central Queensland. I've spent the last 13 years of my life creating content for social media and for online media, mostly using big DSLR cameras like I have here. But in between that, we have used mobile phones to create content. It's the great thing about mobile phones is that they're so advanced these days that you can do a lot with them. The capability that you have with them to shoot quality video is just next level in comparison to the mobile phone technology 10 years ago. The very first film camera that I brought, and used the word film camera, but I mean digital film camera, is actually lower quality than the mobile phone that I own today. So the mobile phone that I'm using is the Samsung Note 20 Ultra, which I think is one generation old in the Samsung range. But any of the sort of things that I talk about tonight will be universal, whether you're on an iPhone, Apple device, or whether you're using a Samsung or some other brand of mobile phone. The two most popular ones do tend to be Samsung and also iPhone. So in this webinar tonight, we're going to be covering, and I say tonight, but if you're watching this later on YouTube, it can be whatever time zone you're in, but at the moment it's nighttime. I'll be covering how to film on your smartphone, editing video, your video lengths, improving the quality, and the importance of audio. Now, if you see my head darting around like a little bit of a yo-yo, it's because I've got multiple screens set up. So I'm looking across between my notes and the information that I have in front of me and what you're seeing. So let's get started. We're going to talk about filming. So filming doesn't necessarily have to involve moving images per se. If we look back in the early days of filming, it was quite literally just a series of stitched photos that were played through a revolving carousel that created the illusion of movement for the viewer. So when we're filming, we can actually stitch together a bunch of photos and create the same sort of effect. It really depends on the style that you're going for in your video, which brings us to our storyline. Storyline is always the most important thing. How we actually portray it is just the means of connecting with our audience. So if we look at how to film on our mobile phone, we're going to be looking at things like how you focus, how you position, stabilize, ratio, whether you go portrait or landscape, and what app do you use. By default, most of you will probably be using your mobile phone's default video or photo app. But there's nothing to say you cannot download a third-party app, which gives you more features and more functions. The first recommendation, though, when you're filming with your mobile phone is make sure your app is up to date. Now, if you bought a phone 3 or 4 years ago and you've never bothered to do an update, well, there's a lot of potential that you're missing out on just in terms of capability that your phone has probably got access to that you're not using because it's not up to date. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my mobile phone onto a screen share and I'll show you what I'm actually going to be doing. So let me just get set up. Okay, hopefully you should all be seeing my mobile device now. It's again, like I said, Samsung Note Ultra 20. I'm just going to open up the camera app down in the bottom right-hand corner. And this is my default view. This is the mess that is my desk that you can't see right now. You're seeing the pretty green screen version. I'm going to put it onto the video app. And straight away, the first thing with this is you'll notice that I have grid lines set up. Grid lines are just a good way to be able to frame your image. It's very, very useful for sort of how you position your imagery. I'm just looking for something suitable on the mess that is my desk to actually take a photograph of. Hopefully everyone forgives me for my parts. But this is what I've decided on. So I've got my little world globe and some gum, probably what most people find on their desk. And as you can see, at the moment I'm using a portrait function. And portrait's more useful if you're filming stories for social media, if you're doing something on TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram stories, Facebook stories. Traditionally in filming, we work in the landscape mode, which view is now flipped, but for the view that I got is the right way up. So I'll actually just see if I can flip this in my Zoom. And I believe there is probably a way to do it, but I've probably got to go back in my Zoom app to make it happen. But I flipped to my phone to give me a landscape view. Landscape's better if you're shooting essentially feed videos for your main Facebook wall, as opposed to if you're just shooting stories. So if you're purely looking at social media, I imagine the majority of you will be filming in the portrait view. The important thing to remember with portrait view is it's better for people, but if you're focusing on objects like this in the current framing, it's not as suitable. If we zoom in and make it the entire frame, it is better suited. Which brings us to one of our first things. When we start looking at, close my app. When we start looking at objects, objects actually have direction. So when we look at an object, it actually moves in a particular way. So framing it exactly to center is kind of boring, as opposed to putting it slightly off center and giving it some dead space on this side here. It just makes it a little bit more interesting, especially if we start doing something like this, giving a little bit of movement in the imagery. As opposed to if it was directly on center, it's kind of boring even with a little bit of movement. So talking about movement when filming videos, there's essentially two ways to do it. One is to move the camera, and the second one is to move the object. So those are our two types of standard movements. If you can combine the two, you can create some really cool effects almost immediately, as opposed to just having a stationary camera and a talking head. Speaking of that, talking head, this is the traditional view that the majority of you are going to see with any sort of videos. It's a talking head. It's really boring. You don't want to be just looking at a talking head all night, which is interesting because when we do these webinars, I'm literally a talking head in front of you. But you want to add a bit of dynamic movement. You want to create some movement with your character, but you don't want to do anything that's too overboard. Otherwise, you're going to make your customer, the people viewing your video, actually a little bit motion sick. So a little bit of movement is handy for progressing your subject and creating a little bit of storyline. That it just makes it a little bit more exciting than just having something that's stationary and this is extra gum. So coming back to my grid lines, you'll see the grid lines that are here in front of me. I can use them to basically make sure that my shot is perfectly level and positioned well and framed correctly. If I'm photographing a wide scene, and I'm going to move to something that's a little bit more exciting. This is my Dave Dorman original Boba Fett piece. Very exciting. And as you can see, even the way that this is framed, it uses a section of rule of thirds. We want to have essentially elements of your shots broken up into the different squares of the video, the different rectangles. So if I was to film it more from a side angle, I'm just trying to do this reverse on my camera and my phone, it's slightly more interesting over this angle than it is dead straight on. So that's one of the walkaway tips you can take. If you film something from a slight angle, it is more exciting and looks better and is more interesting, especially when you add a little bit of movement to it, than if you put it straight on and flush. Keeping going with my Star Wars theme, we've got my C-3PO collectible here. Now, he's facing away from me. He's slightly angled in his box. So if I bring my shot directly onto him, again, it's not as exciting as if I give him a little bit of direction. So when we're filming, we like to give a little bit of direction by adding that bit of movement to our shot. As you can see, I am a bit of a Star Wars fan, but I will try and keep the references to a minimum. So when we're filming, making sure that we have the right ratio is important as well. We have the option to film in square. We have the option to film it in rectangle. These are all settings that you're going to find on your camera. First, we want to choose if we're going to film in that portrait or landscape. If we're looking for something that's purely going to be stories or quick content, then portrait, which is the better way to go, than landscape. If we're looking for something that's going to be on our feed, in our main part of our social media wall on Facebook, that's probably where we're going to be filming in landscape. Even Instagram, I'd probably be filming in portrait for my videos. So what I'm going to do is I'll bring back out my phone and we'll have a look at the options there for how to get your phone into the different ratios. So back in my settings here, at the top there, you'll notice that I have something that's a little bit black and give it a better view. At the top, there's the settings icon, the flash, timer, full. The next one over is for like creating effects. If we turn the flash on, what it's going to do is turn the light on my camera. We'll get into video mode first, that'll help. If I turn the flash on, it's just going to brighten up the area. Flash is rather quite dirty light. We don't use it a lot in basically in anything that's even semi-professional because it's just so harsh. It's not diffused. It's really dirty light. I'll talk more about lighting as we go, but try not to use your flash. You'll notice that there's the hand icon, and the next one over is our ratio setting. So if I click on the ratios, it's going to give me a few options there, including 8K for this particular camera, but we have the option there for square. Now, square is a really great option for every single social media platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram. Actually, not good for TikTok. TikTok does prefer a 9:16 ratio, which is what I was in by default. But Instagram, Facebook stories, you'll get away with a 1:1 ratio. So if you're filming one piece of content and then cutting it down from multiple different social media platforms, the 1:1 ratio, square ratio, is a really great place to start. It's also easier with your grid lines. So make sure you make use of that where you can. We also have the settings function. In the settings, you'll have options for things like front rear camera, and you'll notice that mine has the option for FPS. This is frames per second. Now, in Australia, we default to 24 frames per second. That's what our standard viewing is based off basically TVs and most screen refresh rates. The faster your frame rate, generally the higher quality, but bigger the data is. So don't be afraid to stick it in 30 frames per second. It's not going to affect the viewing quality at all of what your customers are going to see. Most social media platforms are going to take this really nice high resolution shot here and reduce it down to like 320 by 180 anyway. So what you're filming in is overkill for your social media approach. If you do have a camera that does have faster frames per second, it does give you the ability to actually be able to slow down your footage without getting what we call frame staggering, which is when you get that jerky motion in slow motion. If you've ever seen like the old, was it the old Charlie Chaplin? think that's the name of the guy, and it's all skip things, it's silent, black and white, and he's really, really jerking the motion. That's because the frame rate of the cameras were really slow back then, and they're trying to film it in as fast as possible, but then export it at a 24 standard frame rate, so it creates a really jerky motion. So if you take a piece of footage that's at 30 frames per second and then try and slow it down, you're going to get that jerky type motion. When we're filming professionally, we'll actually film at 240 frames per second and then slow it down to 24. We get a nice smooth slow motion function. I realize as I say that might be a little bit of a complex topic for some people viewing this if you've never done any sort of film before. But essentially, it depends on the options that your phone has straight off the get-go. And most iPhones, if it's anything in the sort of later generations, will have options for shooting slow speed footage. So you want the highest frame rate possible if you plan to slow it down. That's probably the key takeaway. So the other thing to note is just when you're filming something, especially if you're filming a talking head, I'll flick it around to myself here, talking head. If I tap on the screen and tap into the back here, what can happen is it can change the autofocus. And when it has the autofocus, if I move my head around, I'm going to go a little bit more blurry. While if I tap on myself, it's going to focus on me. So when you're filming, just make sure that you do, in fact, tap on your subject, because that will lock it into that position and make sure that the focus is actually in focus. It's very painful watching a video and background is in focus as opposed to the subject. The other thing is you'll probably have a function to increase the gamma. Just going out of video mode. If I tap on myself, I get this plus minus. Go to minus, it decreases the brightness. If I tap on myself and I increase it, it's going to get really bright and white. That's called gamma. This is useful if you're inside and you're trying to capture the view outside while also getting the people in the view. You can just increase the gamma. All your phones will have this option. Okay, so I'm going to go out of that for the moment. Okay, so you filmed your video. The next step is to think about how you're going to approach the editing of the footage. And I've pre-planned a bit of footage that I'm going to show you. So I'm just going to get it set up on my phone. Just why I'm getting this set up, now would be a really great time to consider asking a question if you do have any. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the footage and then I'm going to show you how I actually approached it and edited it. Just going to locate it here on my screen. So I'm just going to grab a couple of chunks of the footage. So just bear with me while I do this. So talking about editing, all phones are going to come with a default editor. For the most part, that editor should be more than useful for your mobile device. It's only when you want to do something a little bit more complicated where it'd be useful for getting a third-party editor. But I've found, at least lately, most of the default editors that will come with your mobile phone should be more than suitable. So I'm just going to snag a bit of footage and go back into my screen share and show you what I'm looking at. I had this preset up, but it got rid of itself for some reason. Okay, so we're back to my phone and I'm going to go into my editor. What I've done is I've just grabbed a few different sections of footage and thrown them together into the default editor that's come with my mobile phone. You'll notice that the first thing it's got over on the right-hand side, just underneath the picture of me with my mustache mask, is it's got a setting there to adjust the ratio. So by default, 9:16. but we can click on that and change it to what suits us best. 4 to 3, 3 to 4. As I go through, it's going to change the frame size each and every time. I'm just going to leave it on the default, which is where we started with. So I've grabbed a series of shots, and I do have the audio on, so I'm just going to reduce that. And each of these shots have options to split, edit, change, and modify. So I have this shot, which is just me turning off the light as I was walking out of a hotel. And we might not want to use all this footage. So the first option I'm going to do is I'm going to use the split function. So I'm going to choose where in my video I want to split my footage. So I'm going to split it there at the door. And now what I have is I have 2 separate files. So when you're filming, it's often to get a little bit at the end, a little bit at the start. We call these tops and tails. So when you have a top and a tail, you might not use all the top and the tail. You might only be using a section of it. So we film the entire thing, bring what we're filming into frame, then cut the start and cut the end. That way we're rolling when the action starts happening and you don't get a bit of movement, which seems a bit weird. So we've selected the piece that we want and we don't want this end piece, so I'm just going to delete it. So now we've got this shot here, which was, I think, in one of the Brisbane tunnels. I'm going to click on the edit button and I'm going to have the option to take away the top and the tail just by dragging the pieces at the function at the bottom. I'm going to have the option to rotate it. So if I've shot it the wrong way, I can always rotate it afterwards. Get it the right way back up. Down the bottom there, that's my cutting room. The next one over is my filters. So this is where I can change a different filter to go over top of my phone. So, I might want it in black and white or grayscale. I have a variety of different options here that I can use to enhance the quality of my video. I can also use the slider to choose how much I want it on and off. The next one over is stickers. You have this function as well on your mobile phones. So, wherever you're going to be posting it, like your Instagram and so forth. Same sort of thing with your palette. If you want to write all over your footage, you can do that. We have the text option if you want to add some text to your video. In functions, again, you'll probably find that you'll have these options in wherever you're going to be posting it. So I'll probably do that in when you're going to be posting the video, not in your actual app. And this one's actually quite good, this function here. This is where you can enhance your beauty features, jawline, smoothness, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of post-functional editing involved with that. And what I might actually do is I might go into this one here, me wearing the mask. It's about as close to a face video as we get with me. I'm going to use the edit function. And I'm just going to come down and have a look at that beauty filter and see what it's going to do to my video. I'm not actually confident it's identified enough of my face to make it actually functional, but it does have that option. The final category here on my phone, you'll probably find this similar sort of setting and maybe just slightly different layout if you're on an iPhone device or any other device, is your playback speed. So we can slow it down and increase the speed. So both very useful sort of functions. And I used all these functions to put together a video where I used essentially short snippets of various things that I did throughout the course of about a week to create an exciting video, as opposed to just having a video of me walking through an airport or on stage to do an event. So what I'm going to do is go back into my app, and this is the actual finished video that I published through to my TikTok. So nice little short snippets, and all these short snippets together essentially created an interesting video. So this is probably one of the more popular styles of video that have come out in the last sort of 2 to 3 years. Short snippets that showcase action. Attention spans are very, very short these days, so having exciting and engaging videos tends to be made up of smaller pieces of content with a lot of movement, a lot of different dynamic range, and generally some sort of exciting beat. So we had a question whether this would be iMovie and iPhone. Yeah, so for your mobile phone, if you're an Apple user, it'd be your iMovie. In the particular case of the phone that I'm using today, if I want to go in and edit this, I click the edit button, which is the little pencil icon, and then in the top right corner, I got my movie studio up in the top right hand corner, which is that little play button with the plus. I click on that and that takes me into my studio. Okay, so coming back to attention spans, they're very, very short. It's getting harder and harder to engage your audience. They want that short, awesome, quick type content. Things with a lot of excitement, a lot of movement, a lot of dynamic range, as opposed to talking ahead or here's an exciting new product. So talking about lengths, you generally want a video length that is around about 15 seconds. That's your default for your stories if you're on Instagram or Facebook. You want 30 seconds or so for your TikToks, 15 to 30 seconds. For Facebook, if you're putting to your feed, around about a maximum of 1 minute works best. YouTube is the only one you can really get away with a little bit more. So with YouTube, you're looking for around about 8 to 9 minutes in video length. But that video length has to be exciting, it has to be engaging. If you don't get your customers in the sort of the first 5 seconds of putting your video up, they're really not going to follow along. So you really have to engage with them immediately and catch their attention and draw them in. Give them something that makes them excited straight off the bat. Start with your best bit of imagery, start with questions, start with something that's going to excite them and convince them to watch the next 15 to 45 to 9 minutes of your video. So you want something that is immediately engaging. If you're using things like your TikToks or your stories, you can use the functions that are inbuilt into the apps to add music on top of it. So have a look to see what music's popular at the moment, or what music is trending. And if your video matches the theme of those trending musics, add to it. Use the music built into those apps to create a feel for your video. When we do a lot of editing, and we'll always edit to the beat. So work out the beat of your video, that underlying bass. When you work out that bass, that is when you should be changing each of your shots, every time the beat drops. And if you do that, you'll create a nice rhythm and nice flow with your video. So audio is important, and again, I'm going to keep coming back to audio. It's essentially almost as important as the actual filming, but it's often left behind. Just one moment. Okay, so let's talk about how to actually improve the quality of your video. So what we're going to talk about first is lighting. And there's a few different options that you can go down with lighting, from using your lighting in your office or your home, right down to adding additional lights. So the most popular one that you'll see is a ring light. Ring lights are generally used in the makeup or beauty world. The nice bit about a ring light, as opposed to the light that comes default in your phone, is that it comes from a wide source. which essentially diffuses the light over a large area. Whenever you're filming anything, you don't want what we call harsh light, which is one point of focus onto a subject, whether that's a person or object, just because if you do that, it's going to look dirty. It's going to look terrible. It's a really nasty light. So you want nice, soft light. If you only do have one light source, one of the first tricks is to try and diffuse it, spread that light out. So you can grab, a light piece of cloth, old shirt, a white one's best, and put it over the top of the light. And what they'll do is it will break up the harshness of the beam and spread it over a much wider area. So we have another question here from the audience. The question is, what is the best apps to add music, for your Instagram? The music options are limited, and maybe you do have to pay for those options. So using the actual inbuilt apps are generally the best way to go, just because that music is already licensed for the app, so you're not going to have problems with copyright down the line. You can't just grab the most popular song and decide to use it, because you'll generally get infringed for copyright. So what you're looking for is copyright-free music. So there's no copyright license held against it in terms of commercial operation. There's a few different websites that you can use which have copyright-free music. They're generally not the best. If you do pay for it, it creates a much wider option. Just finding the one that my team often use, and it's called Academic Sound. So I'll show you this site. This is one that you do pay for. So Academic Sound. The reason why we use this one in particular is because it has sound effects, it has all great range of different music. But what we can do is we can pull the stems from it. So if we find a song where we really love the music, but we don't want the vocals, we can just pull the beats and just use the beats and not the vocals. So that's why it's our chosen one, what we use. In terms of pricing, how much it costs, if you're using it for commercial use for your business, then you're looking at $25 US a month. But it does have a great selection, but that is what I personally use, and that's what my team uses. So great question there. So coming back to the lighting, soften lighting, use multiple light sources, but a ring light's a great way to go. And you can pick them up for a reasonably good price. They also double as a great light for doing your makeup, and a lot of them come with a spot to put your mobile phone in, which is also useful because then you have a tripod to stabilize your mobile phone, which brings us into our next section, which is stabilizing. So stabilizing your mobile phone could be something as simple as actually putting it in a tripod. If we're going to be holding our mobile phone for the purpose of filming, if we bring our elbows down, lock them into our sides, it gives us a really good movement without getting our phone having that jerky type effect. So just take your arms, hold your mobile phone in the center, lock your elbows in, down by your side. It will give you very nice, very stable movement, even if you're walking. Other than that, getting a stabilizer. So this is essentially your most simple ones you can get from Officeworks. They're what we call a free access gimbal. So if you move up, it'll stabilize and won't have that jerkiness up and down, left and right, or side to side, and rotate. So it gives you a really nice, really smooth set of movement, even if you're running. So this is if you're going to be doing a lot of serious filming with your phone, I recommend getting one of these stabilizers. They're very useful. I've used them. They're very easy to use. Which brings us to what I'd probably consider to be the most important topic, audio. If you have bad audio, it's generally not forgiven in a video. If you can't immediately improve the quality of your audio, then adding subtitles is a simple solution. But there's a few different options in terms of immediate audio improvements. So this is our most basic type. This is what we call a shotgun microphone. When you use a shotgun microphone, it spreads out from the source, and it's very much pointed in one direction. So up close, it will be very dynamic and just have the subject. If I was talking like this, it'd be very clear, but then it'll start to spread out from that point and capture the background ambience and noise, depending on how far you are away from the microphone. So generally, the closer you can have the microphone to the audio source, the better the quality of audio you're going to get, which is where the lav mic comes in. A lav mic is just a very simple little mic. You can buy these that plug into all your different mobile phone devices. And what you do with a lav mic is you clip it onto your shirt. And I'm going to stop screen sharing just for a minute, make it easier for me. You clip it onto your shirt very close to the audio source, and you'll get nice, clean audio. The next one is our interviewer microphone. These are what we call omnidirectional microphone, in that they'll capture the audio that's close to the subject, then they'll capture all the ambience around them. These are good when you're doing interviews because you can be talking and then you can point it at your subject and get clean and clear audio. Again, these are available with plugins to your mobile phone. The final type that we have is our Rode wireless ones. There's a few other brands, but the Rode is the most popular. These are what we actually use in a commercial sense, but for high quality audio, these are reasonably cheap at around about the $300 mark. These are going to give you absolute premium audio quality out in the field we're filming. One works as a receiver, so you put that with your camera. The other one works as like a larger version of the lav mic, and you just simply clip it onto the shirt of the subject. It is a bit bigger and bulkier, so we generally tuck it inside the shirt, just like that, and you'll get nice, clean, clear audio, even if you're 20 or 30 meters apart. So these are absolute favorite of mine. But failing that, what you can do is you can just grab the headphones that came with your mobile phone. You have your headphone pieces, but they also have a microphone attached to them. Grab that microphone piece, and what you can do is just loop it through the shirt, plug the audio jack into your mobile phone, and you'll get the same sort of lav type microphone that you would get if you used this little one here. So if that's one really great takeaway, use the headphones that came with your mobile phone and the right jack input as well. But failing that, what you want to do is consider getting yourself a lav mic for your mobile phone. So starting at around the $12 mark from Kogan, they're reasonably well affordable. There's a variety of different ones, different styles, different audio qualities. But they're generally a omnidirectional microphone, and they'll pick up audio from anywhere around the immediate area. If you go slightly more expensive, you do have the ability to control the gain, which is how much essentially it picks up. If you lower the gain to as low as possible and clip it onto your mic, onto your subject as close as possible, you'll get the cleanest and clearest audio. So that's what I generally recommend when people go, how do I improve the quality of my audio? And audio is so important. Bad video is often forgiven, bad audio is not forgiven. But if you do have a situation where you do have bad audio, I do recommend adding subtitles onto your videos. If you have subtitles on your videos, at least people will be able to watch along. The other thing to consider is that when people are playing videos, they're not always watching them with the audio turned up. It could be situations where they're on public transport, they don't have the headphones. It could be, they're at dinner. The kids are at dinner, they're playing on their mobile phones, they're trying to watch their videos without being too distracted. It could be that it's tradesmen who are working on your house up in the ceiling, pretending to work. They're not necessarily going to be making a lot of noise because they want you to think that they're working. I have seen that one actually in person. So adding subtitles to your videos is useful even if your audio quality is good. So there's essentially two ways you can add subtitles to your videos. The first one is you can do it in-app by simply writing the words in each section of the video. The second one is use the audio subtitle functions that are built into whatever app you're going to be posting on. So if you're posting on Facebook, it has the options there, add subtitles. Same thing with Facebook, etc., etc. Even TikTok does. And there's third-party apps as well that will add subtitles to it. You can even add voiceover to your videos. That's very common at the moment on TikTok. We use a voiceover function to talk out the video for you, which is useful if you're not necessarily the best at talking on video. The key thing to keep in mind there, the voice is a little bit robotic, but it's become so common that people are used to it and doesn't seem to bother you. As opposed to if you get that on the phone, you're going to be a little bit annoyed and probably just hang straight up. So that covers probably the three most important things. Having your stable audio, stable video. You don't want shaky video. Shaky video, no one's ever going to watch. You've got to have well-lit video. If you can't see the subject, can't see what's going on, it's going to be like, what is going on here? And having good audio. Good audio is it's probably the number one thing that people put to a second thought when they're filming the video. With that as well is wind noise. You don't want wind noise. Wind noise just sounds horrible. You get crackling, you get staticky noises, and it cuts out the actual voice that's talking. So the easiest way to get rid of wind noise is to use a dead cat or a windsock if you're not an industry person. So I'm just going to bring up an example of what that looks like, making sure I don't actually show a picture here of a dead cat. So this is what we call a dead cat. And it's essentially a fairy sock that goes over top of your microphone and cuts out wind noise. And these are available whether you're using a little microphone or one of these bigger microphones. Essentially, they just take away the wind noise. And if you buy a microphone, chances are it will probably come with some sort of version of a dead cat. But if you end up in a situation where you're getting a lot of bad audio noise, and you should always monitor and check your audio when filming, simply putting something in between the source of the wind or the motion and your microphone will solve that problem. So it could be something as simple as grabbing it's not going to work with a green screen, grabbing a piece of cardboard and grabbing your microphone and putting the cardboard between your wind source and your audio source. That'll clean up your audio quality if you don't have an option for a windsock or a dead cat, as we call it in the industry. So those are my recommendations to improve the quality of your smartphone video. If you have any questions, we're getting towards the end of our webinar now, so now's a great time to ask for my advice on how to get better quality video from your smartphone. While you take the opportunity right now to put your question in the question box below, I'm just going to talk to you briefly about the Digital Solutions Program, which brought you this webinar tonight on smarter smartphone video creation. So I'll bring up the screen and just tell you a little bit about this. So the Digital Solutions Program is funded by the Commonwealth Government and offers up to 7 hours of mentorship for only $44. So you have this great value program, which is commercially you'd be paying in the thousands for only $44. And with that, you get the opportunity to work one-on-one with a digital solutions advisor, an expert in their field or many fields that can assist you with growing your business. So how good would it be to have a one-on-one direct with me where I can talk to you about how to get better filming for your for your social media. You can do that. Or, getting your social media set up so that you get more engagement on the videos that you do post. You can do that. And you can do so much more through our program. You can get help with a wide variety of subjects, everything from, managing your staff to applying for grants and tenders, to things like small business software, websites, and selling online. To access the program through Business Station, you just have to have fewer than 20 employees. You have to have an ABN registered in Western Australia, Queensland, Northern Territory, and be operating to make a profit. Now, if you're outside Western Australia, Queensland, Northern Territory, you can still access the program. It's just by a different provider. So this is an absolutely great program. Is available now at the time of this webinar. So if you haven't already jumped on and have a look, I recommend that you do. Why it's available. And you can access it by going to businessstation.com.au, program digital solutions. Tentatively, just type into Google Business Station and Digital Solutions, and you'll find your way to the site here. So recommend checking it out. It's a great opportunity to go the next steps and try and grow your business. So as mentioned before, I'm your digital solutions advisor for Central Queensland. I've been Liam Fahey, and I've been creating content for social media for 13 years now. So now's your last chance to ask a question on anything to do with social media, video creation, anything around that space. If you're watching this on YouTube and you do have a question, feel free to get in touch with me. You'll be able to contact me through Business Station. I will check out the YouTube link and see if there's any comments there at some point in the coming days after this video is posted. Okay, so I'm going to close off our webinar now, but if you do have any questions, I will stay on for a few more minutes.